Tonight on the Daily Debrief, opening statements in two high-profile cases. One is the trial of a drug lord. The other is the trial of a man accused of murdering his girlfriend's abusive mother. And is a Florida stabbing manslaughter or self-defense? That's straight ahead on the Daily Debrief for Monday, November 12th. And good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Daily Debrief. Opening statements are scheduled tomorrow in the biggest U.S. federal prosecution to date of an accused drug lord. Joaquin Guzman, better known as El Chapo, will be tried on a series of charges in U.S. District Court in Brooklyn. He's accused of smuggling nearly 500,000 pounds of cocaine into the United States. It took attorneys 3 days to select a final jury. 1,000 people filled out initial questionnaires. The final panel is made up of 7 women and 5 men. Chief Investigative Correspondent Brian Ross is with me tonight here on the Debrief. So, Brian, this all starts tomorrow, and it is big.
It is, and under extremely heavy security, almost unprecedented. They're bringing El Chapo in from his jail in Manhattan, across the river into Brooklyn. At one point, they've been shutting down the Brooklyn Bridge during the transport of him to make sure there's no attempt to try to get him to escape. He has escaped twice while in custody in Mexico. This is video taken inside his jail cell in Mexico in 2015. He had associates and people working for the prison dig a mile-long tunnel under his cell, all the way a mile long, with a motorcycle there on tracks, let him escape. And while he was on the run for so many years, he actually made big news when he sat down for an interview with actor Sean Penn on behalf of Rolling Stone. And Penn asked him, "Are you a violent man?"
No, eso es falso, porque el día que yo no exista, no va a mermar lo que es nada, el tráfico de droga. ¿Usted se considera un hombre violento? No, señor. ¿Usted busca que no haya violencia? ¿Usted busca evitar la violencia con todo eso? Solamente deja la violencia como último recurso, ¿sí? Pues yo lo que hago es defenderme nada más, pero que yo ande buscando problemas, jamás.
And of course, he talks about being violence only as a last resort. He's accused in this 17-count indictment of at least 33 murders, and there are dozens more they believe that he actually ordered. They just can't prove. Shortly after that interview, he was taken into custody, and Mexico agreed to extradite him to the U.S. to stand trial here.
This is going to be big. As I said, we have a large jury pool, a number of alternates, I should say, in case something happens in this case. And jurors are being guarded with extreme secrecy in a case like this.
Absolutely. They're being brought to an undisclosed location and then transported by marshals into the courthouse. Many of the jurors said they were too afraid to sit on the jury panel. One woman actually reportedly had a panic attack after she was accepted onto the jury. The judge persuaded her to stay on. So there's great security around this. I was over there last week. U.S. Marshals said, we're taking no nonsense from anybody in this case.
I can understand that, certainly. Now, a couple people who didn't make it on the jury, one was a Michael Jackson impersonator.
Right.
The other asked for El Chapo's autograph. Now, is that just a get-out-of-jury service free card to ask for an autograph?
Well, it certainly would be. And in the case of the Michael Jackson impersonator, it was felt that he would be too well known as such to actually maintain his anonymity during the trial, which is expected to last 3 to 4 months.
This will be a long trial. Chief Investigative Correspondent Brian Ross, appreciate your insight on this case, as always. We are also preparing for opening statements tomorrow in the case of a Wisconsin man accused of murdering his Missouri girlfriend's mother and then fleeing back to Wisconsin. Nicholas Godejohn is scheduled to go on trial tomorrow on first-degree murder charges related to the death of his online girlfriend's mother. Victim Dee Blanchard died in 2015 at age 48. Daughter Gypsy Blanchard already pleaded guilty to second-degree murder. She's serving a 10-year sentence. Prosecutors went soft on her because her mother had abused her. Court documents argue that Nicholas killed Dee after Gypsy handed him gloves and a knife. Authorities say the couple bragged about the crime on Facebook. This case was also the subject of a popular HBO documentary. One issue unique to this case is that Gypsy Blanchard reportedly suffered years of abuse by her mother. Dee Dee Blanchard reportedly suffered from a mental health condition known as Munchausen syndrome by proxy. It's a form of child abuse where a caretaker makes up an illness and puts a child through unnecessary medical treatment. Authorities say Gypsy Blanchard suffered from that medical treatment that was brought on by her mother, and that is why they went soft on her. Juvenile court judge and Law and Crime trial host Ashley Wilcott joined in the debate about how that'll affect the trial.
And I handle a couple of custody cases where this diagnosis is at play with one of the parents, and the other parent I represent is trying to get custody. Custody is very different from criminal, but let me suggest this. In criminal, as we know, you either have to show insanity, right, or lack of capacity, or self-defense, or that they didn't know that what they were doing was wrong at the time they were doing it. I do not think that any of the abuse that she suffered, which she did, amounts to any of those legal arguments or legal defenses. And so, you know, 1 out of every 4 children is abused in the nation. And so can you say that every one of those children as an adult has a right to commit a violent murder of their parent and then say, but I was the victim of abuse? I would suggest no.
The defendant in this trial, Nicholas Godejohn, has suggested he will press autism as a partial defense in some respect. Today on the Law and Crime Network, our own digital video producer, Ashton Swin, publicly discussed her own diagnosis on the autism spectrum and how she expects that defense to unfold in this trial.
I am not a fan of strategy games because I cannot think ahead more than a step. So I love chess, can't play it. After listening to Godejohn's testimony and stuff, that I feel that he is or was or could be easily manipulated, gullible, lots of good words to use, that I know those words well. I absolutely feel that he felt that he had to step in and help her out of a situation, and that he saw her as somebody being hurt by somebody else, and he needed to take care of that situation. With his capacity, he was pretty much open because of the manipulation thing, that he was able to, or that he was willing to do whatever it took to help her out. At first, I think he wanted to run away with her, but that just, I don't think that was something that was in her mind, something that was a possibility or something that should have happened. But I think that he definitely was easily manipulated in that situation.
Criminal defense attorney Mike Koribanics is with us tonight on the Daily Debrief. Mike, good to see you again.
Nice to be here.
Okay, so what do you make of this case? This is a complex case with a lot of moving parts. You've got the girlfriend already serving time. You've got the boyfriend on trial. This time, you've got the mother dead.
This is really almost unbelievable. Like, moving parts is the perfect way to describe this. She's already pled, as you said. It's just this other young man. I mean, it's just really a scary case, especially with those Facebook posts.
I agree with that. Okay, so we have all these possible defenses. You've got this syndrome, which apparently made the mother bring the daughter in for these medical treatments, and then you've got autism on behalf of the co-defendant. Is this going to be a case with a lot of expert testimony?
It has to be. It has to be. That's why I saw in one of the articles I was reading about this case is like the judge is still deciding whether he's going to let expert testimony come out. I don't see how you can give anybody their due process rights for the defense and not allow an expert to testify in this case.
You also don't want people just submitting any old willy-nilly science in, though. There's got to be reliability, assuming that Missouri is a state that follows the standards that require that. Some do, some don't, but generally there's got to be reliability. The results have to be able to be duplicated, etc.
And there also has to be acceptance throughout the professional community that's offering it. So this is interesting. I'm not very familiar with this syndrome that they're trying to talk about, and I know autism is part of the defense, but these spectrums will become very interesting because a lot of it is subjective.
Does the defendant in the first case take the stand in the second case? Does the girlfriend testify against the boyfriend?
I would think that she's going to try to do whatever she can to get out of jail, and I would think she would.
I would wonder if it was part of the deal that led to the original sentence.
I would imagine it was, especially since there was such leniency in it.
It'll be an interesting case to follow, and again, the opening statements are set to kick off in that case tomorrow. Mike, we'll check in with you again in a second. Still ahead tonight, though, on the Daily Debrief, a Florida manslaughter defendant says he stabbed his victim in self-defense. The question, does the defendant's version of the story make sense when compared to toxicology results on the victim? That's a big question. Also, North Carolina authorities released this surveillance video of a man who may hold the key to the kidnapping of a teenager. We'll discuss it after the break here on the Daily Debrief. And welcome back again, everybody. Time now for an update on incidents making headlines with Anthony Velez.
Here are today's top crime stories trending on Law&Crime.com and across the country. A mother in North Carolina is facing multiple charges after her infant son died while she was reportedly taking a nap. 30-year-old Michia Avery of Cary was arrested after her 5-month-old son, Benjamin, died in her care back in September. Avery initially claimed she took a nap while the child was in a car seat next to her bed, and when she awoke, found the infant under a plastic bag. The child was transported to a nearby hospital and pronounced dead. Authorities have now charged Avery with involuntary manslaughter and child abuse. Police in New York had an unforgettable experience when they encountered a wayward elephant who wandered away from a nearby animal sanctuary. New York State Police released images of the lost pachyderm they found on a leisurely stroll in Westtown, a town 70 miles northwest of New York City. Officers were able to escort the lost elephant back to the animal sanctuary without incident. Authorities in North Carolina have released surveillance footage of a person of interest in the brazen kidnapping of 13-year-old Hania Noelia Aguilar. Aguilar has been missing since November 5th when she was reportedly forced into an SUV by a suspect outside her home in Lumberton. Authorities released the footage of the unidentified person of interest, hoping to elicit a tip that could lead to the missing 13-year-old. A reward of $20,000 is being offered for information leading to Hania's return. Those were today's top crime stories. I'm Anthony Velez for the Daily Debrief.
Back to court tonight. We're in Florida. Defendant Armando Baptista faces manslaughter charges in what's been described as a road rage stabbing. Victim Fakhreddin Knight went by the nickname Mohammed. He was on his way home from a party with his girlfriend, Wendy Gimbolas, when he lost his life. At a stop sign, a car driven by defendants Armando Baptista and Demetrius Elder would not move. Knight honked his car horn, but Baptista and Elder wouldn't budge, as I said. What happened next, though, is a big he said, she said. It resulted in Knight being stabbed and killed. Prosecutors originally sought murder charges against both Demetrius Elder and Armando Baptista, but they later downgraded those charges to manslaughter. The jury in the Elder case, which we just saw a second ago, acquitted Elder of the top charge. Jurors instead convicted Elder of the lesser charge of culpable negligence. That's a misdemeanor carrying up to 1 year in jail. Testimony in this case, though, for this defendant is on hold due to the Veterans Day holiday today. But on Friday, Baptista admitted to police in an interrogation that he stabbed victim Mohammed Knight. He said that the victim attacked him and would not relent.
We took the stop sign, waiting, chit-chatting, waiting. The traffic stopped and my door just swung open. And the man just standing there, he just looked by the time I just took turned around and I'm like, what? He thought to saying, what the hell? He was on me. I seen his hand come around, his right hand come around. I didn't know what it was. But he hit me in the head, then I realized it was a ball. He hit me twice in the head, and the ball broke the second time. But that time the ball broke, I had my hands up for every time the ball broke, that's when I pulled out my knife. And I just started, I stabbed him. He was just determined. He had to look in his face. I don't know what he was on, but oh Lord, I don't know. I kept screaming, and he wouldn't stop. And that's when Demetrius came and stabbed him in the back, because he just went this. And he backed up. That's when I closed the door real quick, and Demetrius got in the car, and we left.
A toxicologist testified that victim Muhammad Knight had cocaine, marijuana, alcohol, and another drug in his system when he died. A medical examiner testified that, in his opinion, some of the wounds suffered by the victim were defensive. However, on cross-examination, the defense took away much of the sting of that opinion. You're about to watch questions from both the prosecution and the defense.
Injury to the heart is fatal. Injury to the lungs is potentially fatal. Injury to the kidney is potentially lethal also. We determined that all wounds inflicted on the arms and legs called defensive type of wound because person tried to protect more vital organs of the body and head with his arms, with his hands. So wounds of hands and forearms, it's defensive type of wound.
In your training, all wounds to the arms or hands are characterized as, quote, defensive wounds, correct?
Correct.
All right. You are not giving an opinion as to where you believe the position of the individuals involved in the altercation were, correct?
Correct.
In court on Friday, a friend of the victims testified about what occurred at the party where the defendants and the victim were all present before that stabbing at the stop sign. Now, at one point in this next clip, you'll hear the judge ask for a proffer. That's where the jury was excused to clear up an evidence issue.
Is this like a regular thing? Is this a special event? Why are people there?
Regular thing.
So every Friday night, everybody hangs out at Corey's?
Yes, ma'am.
Or you just kind of show up?
Yeah, because like we cool with his dad too. His dad is a senior citizen, but he's real cool.
Describe to me what you're looking at as you see Muhammad walk over to Armando. What is his physical kind of demeanor?
It was more peripheral because I was speaking to a young lady at the time, so I wasn't really paying attention to what was going on. I kind of had an idea in my mind of what was going on, but I really wasn't. It wasn't my concern too much. So I wasn't really paying attention, but I seen him over there, and if I was focusing on it, then I probably would have knew what they was talking about, but I honestly wasn't. I was just really wasn't paying attention to them.
I'm going to ask for a proffer here.
Now, had I not been paying attention to her, and like, I would assume that he was going up there to him to talk to him about why he punched Walter.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's what you thought was happening.
Yeah. If I was, assuming, I would think that's what it was, but I honestly didn't really care.
Did you see Corey point out Armando to Muhammad? If you answered that question, what would your answer have been?
There was no pointing involved.
Okay. Did he make him aware?
Yes.
If he wasn't paying attention to the ladies, he would have seen what happened. Some of the testimony you heard was in front of the jury. Some of it was ultimately presented to the jury. The defense is trying to link the stabbing at the stop sign to an altercation at this party where everyone was hanging out earlier that night. But on Thursday in court, the victim's girlfriend suggested that the stop sign stabbing started off as a casual, innocent, isolated encounter.
What is Muhammad doing besides talking? What do you see him do?
He's holding his little red Solo cup in his right hand.
Do you see him take any drinks of his red Solo cup? Do you know if he was holding it on the top of the cup?
No, ma'am, in the middle.
In the middle. After they're talking for a little bit, what happens next?
Muhammad switches the Solo cup from his right hand to his left, and he extends his right hand out and downward, and that's when the passenger threw a punch. Now they're up against the car, then they're in the car. The passenger's on his back. The passenger winds up inside, laying on his back. Muhammad's on top of him. I start walking towards the car. The driver gets out, comes walking around the back of the car, looks at me, and yells, "You better come get your man." I go walking up to the car, shaking my head, because at this point I think, they're fighting for no reason.
Did Muhammad have a weapon with him?
No, not at all.
Did you have any weapons in your car?
No, ma'am. And I'm pulling at the back of his shirt. I said, "Baby, come on, we gotta go. We gotta go see Mom."
And what does he say to you at that point?
He turns his head towards the left and he screams, he's got a knife.
Friend's testimony turned to the stabbing itself.
I was like, baby, you got the knife, come on, let's go.
Are they tussling? Are they still in the seat?
They're still in the seat. I pulled him up. I saw red blood from his chest all the way down to his pants. My first reaction was get him away from these fools. The driver was standing to my left. The passenger was standing to Muhammad's right.
Okay. How did they get out of the car?
When I pulled Muhammad up, I guess the passenger got up with him. I was not paying attention. I was more worried about Muhammad. I grabbed Muhammad's wrist with his left wrist with my right hand. I said, come on, baby, let's go. I took 2 steps forward, and that's when they both started kicking and punching him, or what I called wailing on him.
Back to Mike Koribanics for a little more analysis on this. So, Mike, the defendant admitted in the interrogation that we listened to actually stabbing the victim. He admitted to that, but he said that the victim had this crazed look, was attacking him, wouldn't relent, and then the toxicologist got up there and said he had this mixture of drugs in his system. This all lines up as strong evidence for the defense.
I agree with you. It's this Christmas comes early for the defense. I don't know why the prosecution put his statement in without having to be subject to cross-examination, and they scored big points with that statement coming in because he puts his defense forward.
So does the defendant take the stand in this and get up there and try to explain what happened in his words, or is that going to turn into a nightmare? He
doesn't need to. I mean, they did it for him, and he doesn't have to be cross-examined. I just think it's really beneficial to the defense.
So it's going to be interesting because the defense is probably going to begin its case in earnest, if not first thing tomorrow, then shortly thereafter. I'm waiting to see where they're going to go with this. They might be able to just turn around and say, hey, look, there is reasonable doubt here. He said that he was attacked with a beer bottle. We found one at the scene. He said that, you know, this other stuff happened and some of the evidence fits into the defendant's version of the story.
Well, Aaron, the very fact that we can have this lively debate about it shows that there's reasonable doubt as to both sides. And if there's reasonable doubt, you must acquit.
That's the way it is. Mike Koribanics, criminal defense attorney from New Jersey. Appreciate your insight here on the Daily Debrief.
Thank you for having me today.
That's all the time we have for today on the Daily Debrief. A reminder that the Law and Crime Network will be streaming a number of the cases we discussed, including the Baptista case and the Godejohn case, starting tomorrow at 9 a.m. Have a good evening, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow.